Hello everybody, Vantage here, and today I wanted to go over Jade's kit as she's coming out in a couple days for Honkai Star Rail's Phase 2 2.3 banners. Now, here's the TLDR. She's not that good. The reason being is that we have older characters that already do her job, and we don't need her as she doesn't add enough to certain team comps that she will excel in to be a worthwhile swap. Or worthwhile pull, I mean. First, we'll go over her kit, her teams, and then I will go into more detail why exactly she does not work well. But let's now get started with, firstly, her basic attack. I can't show any gameplay because I am not a early access Hoyoverse content creator, but I can show you the text, and I will be doing beautiful MS Paint renditions of what she does. So, her basic attack. Interestingly enough, this is the first character where, without any other interactions, has Blast as her basic attack. This means that she can hit 3 targets using her basic no matter what. The main target that you hit will be taking quantum damage equal to 90% of Jade's attack, and the 2 adjacent enemies next to that target will be taking 30% of Jade's attack as quantum damage. This works really well for 3 target content like Memory of Chaos and Apocalyptic Shadow to a certain extent, as based off of what we've seen in the first rendition of Apocalyptic Shadow. It seems to be both single target, but a lot of 3 target mechanics as well. Next, let's talk about her skill. Jade's skill is a buff that she can apply either to herself or another ally on the team. And what you should do is place it on an ally instead. The reason being is that the buff called Debt Collector gives an ally only, a 30 speed increase, as well as drain a 2% of their max HP every time they take an action. This makes her a really strong teammate for characters like Blade, where you need to lose HP to do more damage. But she can still apply the buff to herself if you want to play her in a single hyper carry kind of comp. The only benefit both the person that she decides to buff or herself will get is that for every target they hit, that target will take 25% of Jade's attack as an additional instance of quantum damage. This will increase your DPS overall, and if you pair it with an ally that can hit all of the targets on the field, let's say a 5 target hit like from her to skill or from a Himiko ult or other follow-up attacker abilities like that, this will just increase the team-wide damage by a lot and could help clear up pure fiction stages a little bit faster for you. But the more important part revolving around her skill is how it affects her talent. Her talent is a passive charge meter that she has that where once you hit 8 charges, it'll do 120% of Jade's attack as quantum damage to every single enemy on the field. Now, how do you gain these charges? You gain these charges based off the amount of enemies that either Jade or the Debt Collector hits. So, this sets her up perfectly to be a pure fiction monster, since pure fiction consistently has the most amount of enemies on the field. So if you play her with a character that can hit all 5 targets that are on field, she'll gain 5 stacks. And then whenever she takes her turn, she'll gain another 3 stacks from her Blast Basic. This lets you pop off the talent and do a lot of damage to the entire field. You also get another benefit. This benefit is a buff called Pawned Asset that Jade gets. You get 5 stacks of Pawned Asset every time you launch your talent. This gives Jade a 2.4% crit damage increase per stack, and it caps out at 50 stacks. Whenever you do the math, you can see that it gives you 120% crit damage. This makes her way easier to build, seeing as though now you don't have to worry about getting crit damage from your relics, and you only really need to worry about getting crit rate. That's one less stat to focus on whenever you're farming for her gear. And this also makes her a perfect sub DPS / support character and kind of ruins her usefulness as a hyper carry unit, as you really do need somebody that can hit as many targets as possible as your debt collector so that you can get as many talent follow-up attacks off as soon as possible. But this also limits her team building applications because if you try to pair it with a DPS that is only single target, like let's say Seele, or even blast only, like Jinglu with her skill and her ult, it's just less effective. And the effectiveness of the talent lowers the less enemies there are on the field. As soon as you go from even just 5 units to 4 units, you generate less stacks. Because now, your debt collector can only get 4 stacks from a turn, and your Jade still gets 3. That's 7 in total. You're not popping off your talent with that. Same thing, it gets worse as the target count gets lower. That just takes more turns for Jade's talent to be popped, lowering the team DPS by a lot as you slowly kill off every enemy on field. But let's go on to her ult that hopefully fixes a little bit of this talent issue. Now, her ult. It costs 140 energy, so it's pretty high up there in terms of the energy cost for DPSs. And it does 240% of Jade's attack to all enemies as quantum damage. And also gives Jade another buff, which gives her an 80% damage multiplier on her follow-up attacks for the next 2 follow-ups. This is great because, let's say, you start with Jade's turn. She is already about to hit her follow-up attack, and if you ult, you get the follow-up attack because you hit all the enemies on field. You get 1 instance of high damage ult, also a lot more energy because you hit everybody on the field. Then, whenever your debt collector or Jade goes again, they could potentially get another ult talent from Jade off because Jade's charges can overflow, which is great, but one of her team pairings, the debt collector can't overflow, which we'll be talking about shortly. And lastly, let's go over Jade's technique. So, what Jade's technique does is in a circle around her, she will make enemies get afflicted with a debuff called Blind Fealty for 10 seconds. Enemies afflicted by this debuff will not attack you, and if you enter combat while they're affected by this debuff, they will take quantum damage equal to 50% of Jade's attack, and this is to all enemies on the field, as well as give Jade 15 stacks of pawned assets. This changes a lot of things, because now, instead of needing to get 10 talent follow-up attacks off to get the max stacks of her buff, you only need 7. This speeds up her damage ramping, and lets you get to Jade's max potential in less turns, which helps her do just more damage and speed up your clears. Now let's talk about Jade's potential teams. Firstly, with her being a sub DPS, that means you have to play her mainly in duo DPS comps using follow-up attack units, as this is where they shine the most since they hit 5 targets pretty consistently. With that being said, her best units, for 4 stars at least, will definitely be Herta as a great follow-up attack unit. And if you've played the game for a bit, you definitely have her E6 from the free Herta copies that we get from completing Simulated Universe. Another good option in the 5-star camps would be Himiko, Clara, or her best option would be Blade. Now you might be wondering why Blade specifically. The reason being is that Blade's talent requires him to get hit to activate the follow-up attack. You have to get hit 5 separate times or have his HP drained through other mechanics. The way that Blade does this normally is by using his skill to activate his enhanced basic attacks, where he takes damage every time he uses his basic attacks, as well as on the activation of his skill, or when he uses his ult and he's above 50% HP. But with the advent of Jade, now you have another way to lower your HP outside of putting him with Jinglu. There is one massive caveat though. Blade, because he's an older character and for whatever reason when they release him, he cannot overflow on his passive talent. This causes a problem because for every single time you hit 4 out of 5 and then use an action with Blade and he is marked as debt collector, you do not go to 6 out of 5 stacks, you go only to 5 out of 5 stacks, meaning you lose 1 stack. And you might think, oh, this is not that big of a deal, but the lost stack count starts adding up as the fight gets longer. Because if it happens 5 times throughout a fight, and it could, especially if you take a long time completing Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, or Apocalyptic Shadow, if you decide to use a Blade Jade core for any of these activities, that's an entire talent activation lost. And that is a massive amount of lost damage, especially with Jade having some pretty bad single target. So any amount of damage is good damage for him. On top of that, Blade's only form of 5 target attack is his passive, his talent. So if you don't activate the talent, you only get 3 target hits, which makes him kind of rough, seeing as though for Jade, the best unit for her hits 5 targets. And in the pool of 5-star units that are follow-up attackers and or have 5-hit attacks, it is just the main ones being Argenti, who's also on the secondary banner, but your only other main options that you would probably have, especially if you were a newer player, would be either Himiko or Clara. And they just work better in hypercarry comps or with other units. Like, perfect example for Himiko Herta is a bread and butter comp. This is a peanut butter and jam comp. They work so perfectly well together because Himiko needs breaks to do more damage and to activate her follow-up attack. Herta just needs enemies to be below 50% HP to get one instance of her follow-up attack. So they just work well together because they do team field-wide damage and hit all targets that are on the field. On top of this, they help each other because with their ults also doing field-wide damage, they can activate each other's talents. And it just feeds into each other in this beautiful loop of just constant follow-up attacks popping off and off and off. Also, she doesn't work that well with the queen of follow-up attacks being Topaz. Because Topaz is mainly a single target focused follow-up attacker, Jade doesn't work well since you're not generating a lot of stacks of her talent using Topaz or with ratio. So even in a single target sense, Jade doesn't work well because you don't generate enough talent stacks. And the only real buff you're giving to allies is a singular instance of 25% of Jade's attack as quantum damage and a 30 speed boost. Other units can do a similar thing while also providing other benefits. An example of this would be Ting Yun. Ting Yun gives a speed boost, an attack boost, and then with her ult gives energy, as well as giving a single instance of lightning damage on top of the attack boost that she gives. Robin does a very similar thing. Robin action forwards the entire team, gives them an attack boost, as well as giving them an extra instance of damage based off of Robin's attack. This is a 5-star unit, meaning you have to put down pulls that you could be using for other better units. And honestly, it's not worth it. These problems compound with the fact that our only form of multi-target endgame content is Pure Fiction. And in Pure Fiction, if you have Herta Himiko as a core team, decently well built, not something crazy like, 7,200 on both of them, 300, 3k HP and 1k or 2k attack, crazy ass stats, mediocre ass builds, they will still be able to clear one side pretty handily while your other side doesn't need much. But if you're using Herta Himiko, then for Jade, your only options are using a Blade team or a Clara team. And you can still use other options. There's so many other options available. And she doesn't, not exactly power creep, but not even a strong enough side grade to be a worthwhile option. Because you have to take her and then put her with somebody else that's also good as a multi-target follow-up attack unit. And with the main cores being Herta Himiko, a Clara hypercarry / using her as like your main tank in a comp, and then Blade being played with a hypercarry, or if you already own Jinglu, you could play a Jinglu Blade comp and it would work pretty decently well, as Jinglu also consumes team HP. So For me, I don't think Jade is worth it at all. Could you pick her up on a rerun if you in the future, whenever there's more units available in the pool? Yeah. I feel like as it stands right now, with Jade being the only one that has a HP loss mechanic that would benefit from Jade's buff, we would have to wait in the future for other units to come out in the later patches of 2.x or even in the threes to see if Jade will start getting more value. I feel like Jade will become a Jing Yuan situation where, A, the character comes out and they're kind of dog shit, but, you know, a couple patches later, new units come out that just make him better. Like, perfect example, Jing Yuan was dog shit throughout all of 1.x, but he got so much better as soon as 2.x characters started coming out because he works really well with, like, Sparkle and stuff. And it's because his kid is a little bit more unique, and I think Jade will fit in the same kind of category where until some better options for characters come out that can pair with Jade, it's better to use older units. And even then, I think if you're a new player and you're looking for a unit that will help you clear pure fiction because, you know, you don't have Acheron and Fireflyer for whatever reason, or you don't have a Herta Himiko team. You have a Herta Himiko team, but you don't have another team that can clear pure fiction. Pick up Argenti. Argenti is a great unit. He works well in Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction. A little bit, he's a little shit in Apocalyptic Shadow right now, but the current Apocalyptic Shadow is break effect based and not really great for crit rate, crit damage DPSs. He's pretty decently easy to build, and his comps are very strong in general. He'll be a very good like do it all kind of character where he can obliterate both in 3 target or less situations, and he can still do godly in 5 target situations. But that's my opinion on Jade and the upcoming banners for Honkai Star Rail. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Maybe I'm just a doomer and I'm just straight up wrong. Let me know. I want to hear your guys' feeling. But that's going to be all from me. If you guys enjoyed the video, please remember to like. If you hated it, please dislike. And if you want to see more content from me, remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell. But yeah, I'll probably be streaming tonight around 7 p.m. CST, where we will be probably playing more Destiny 2 Iron Banner because I hate life. But that's all for now, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.